growing up, especially like first gen immigrants in the Latino community, yeah, we have this trend that we don't get a lot of financial literacy growing up, but that doesn't mean that we aren't exposed or pick up, money habits and money mindsets that tend to have an influence in our lives. And it isn't until we get a little bit older that, we might uh, start figuring these out. And then even later, if we are trying to teach the next generation, whether it's like our kids or maybe our nieces and nephews, that we start kind of seeing some of these influences come up that we learned throughout our childhood. And so it can be a struggle. And so with me today, I have Jhoanna Astudillo to share her story.
Thank you, Violeta, and I'm so excited to be here. As you mentioned, Jhoanna Astudillo. I'm actually originally from Ecuador. I moved to the US when I was 18, and shortly after, I joined the military for a chance to get my education paid for and learn the language. And a lot of things happened then, and between that until now, I went to college in Illinois. I have a degree in international business and marketing, and then I joined the financial industry almost 18 years ago. So I spent 10 years in sales in different positions at another financial institution. And today I work for BOKF and Bank of Oklahoma in Tulsa. And I'm the Hispanic segment leader for the consumer division for the Hispanic strategy. And I absolutely love what I do. And, you mentioned about that relationship that we have with money or those influences that we have, and I see those every day, not only in my household but outside as well.
You said you joined the army, and this is where you kind of like started learning a little bit about finances and your financial journey, but you also, had a little I guess financial mistakes throughout there because I know I did at the beginning. So I want you to go a little bit into that.
Yeah, so Violeta, I moved to the US and I think it wasn't even 4 weeks
Hmm.
after I was here, I joined the military. So
Wow.
I'm going to start with, and I think many people, even if they didn't go to the military, they're immigrants, can relate to not knowing the language. And
Hmm.
then you add financial pieces to that, right? The culture nuance, banking. We're talking about 1999. So banking, access to banking in Latin America was not the same. It's not the same today as it was before. So I knew nothing about it.
Hmm.
Thankfully, I joined with my sister. And I still remember, as you were asking me, when we went through the process, you have to set up direct deposit. I didn't
Hmm.
even know what that meant. You
Oh,
had to
wow.
pick up an account. And so we were like looking at what other people are doing because we didn't speak the language as well. We could
Hmm.
understand a little bit. But yeah, that was my first paycheck. Um, and for everybody that's in the military as an E1, it's not a lot of money, but they take care of everything else for you. You don't have to worry
Hmm.
about housing. You don't have to worry about food. You don't have to worry about anything. And so the money that you get is just really for you. And without tools or resources and knowing how to manage, you just spend the money. Also
Hmm.
because, I grew up in Ecuador, we didn't have a lot. My parents made a lot of sacrifices. And so I remember that once I got like my first paycheck, all I wanted to do was buy gifts to give back to my family. I used to go to
Hmm.
Ecuador every summer for a whole month. I saved all my vacation in suitcases full of gifts for everybody. So I think for the first 2 years, that's where my paycheck went to. I think I needed to make up for that, for the memory of growing up that we didn't have enough. Didn't
Hmm.
have enough to buy extra pairs of shoes or extra pair of jeans or extra of this. It was always I always remember hearing, and I knew how much of a sacrifice what my parents were making to put us in private schools because education is extremely important to them. And so that
Hmm.
was my way of, okay, now I have a little bit of money. Let me show them gratitude for what they have done. So
Hmm.
I didn't save anything.
I think I had the same mentality. It was like I'm working now and I have, a stable paycheck because I remember like every Christmas I bought my dad like a new TV, and or I had bought my mom a stove because I felt, yeah, that need to kind of like give back because of their sacrifice and all that. So I definitely relate to that.
Ecuador is a little different. While I was in high school, we never had jobs. It's not like here that, teenagers work part-time, so they are getting access to money. They're making their own money, babysitting. That the culture was very different at that time.
Hmm.
And so I also remember the first time I got my account overdrawn. I thought I was
Oh.
in big trouble. I didn't understand. I got the letter and the fee, but I didn't know what it meant. Like I really thought I'm in trouble for
Hmm.
overdrawing my account. So now that I work in the bank, I'm like, it wasn't that big of a trouble, but yes, I wish that I never
Yeah. I feel like everybody that goes into the military has to go through this experience of the car dealership.
Oh,
So
yes.
I want to hear your story. What was your
So my last year in the military, I was in Iraq in Operation Iraqi Freedom. And so one of the interesting things that they have was they had a program that if you put money aside, so that was a smart decision I made.
hmm
If you put money aside, the army will match those funds for you. And
hmm
so I came back and I had like $16,000 saved. And now it was time to get out of the military. So I knew I needed a vehicle. I was going to move
hmm
back to Illinois to go to school. So I went to the dealership and I was so happy. I've been in the service for 4 years. And I had some credit cards from the stores because that I thought that's how you build credit. And they
hmm
denied the loan to me. It was a Nissan dealership. And I only went to Nissan because just like any other Hispanic, especially in that time, you went with where your uncle went, the one that lived here the longest and knew everything about everything, right?
That's
So
true.
since we had a Nissan, I went to Nissan because that was the right car. And they told me it was denied. And I said, why? And the answer I will never forget. They told me I was a ghost in this
Hmm.
country, una
Hmm.
sombra after coming back from Iraq and fighting in the war. And I said, what do you mean? And I learned that, I mean, I don't know that I agree fully, but not having credit is worse as having bad credit. I think that we can
Hmm.
agree to disagree there, but I didn't have credit. I only had store credit cards. I didn't have a bank credit card. So then I offered to put half of the money. Now I know better today. I wish I would put it in the market, but I offered to put half of the money and I still couldn't qualify. I had to had, I think, a cosigner to get my vehicle. My Nissan Sentra 2004 was my first vehicle with a cosigner paying 50% down because I was a ghost in this country.
Oh man, yeah. I had the same thing. I was a ghost, and when you said that and I read like your whole story, I saw that I was like, "Oh, I know how that feels." Because I went for a Honda. I was going for a Nissan, but I didn't find one that was like within like my price range. I think I forgot what it was. And it was the same thing. I didn't have a credit because of course, my parents were like, "Don't get into debt with anything." So I didn't even have a credit card ever. Um, and then I went to the car dealership and yeah, it was so hard. It was so hard to get that Honda. It was like a 2008 Honda Accord.
My parents didn't live in the US, so they went back. We came here because my aunt had applied for us. So it was just my brother and my sister. So
Mhm.
not having parents that lived here,
Mm.
it was, it added the difficulty. Like I said, we had an uncle that he was very educated financially because he had done the work for himself. But
Mhm.
my brother and my sister lived with him for a year, so he kind of was teaching them some things, but I didn't have that exposure. But even today, I realize it just is not one conversation. You don't learn by knowing that somebody else has done something. It is a culture, it's part of a culture piece, and it's a journey to be able to learn, observe, being exposed to. So a conversation is not enough. And
Mhm.
I didn't have that knowledge in the military, so it was pretty interesting. And interesting enough, Violeta, I kept that vehicle for like 10 years. If yeah, I could not let go. It was my
We're
first.
like, no, this cost me way too much to let it go.
Yes, in tears. And you mentioned something that's funny that, growing up, your father said, don't get in debt. So I
Mhm.
remember my dad, he used to say, if you don't have money, don't buy it. And
Mhm.
when he came to visit us, we were so happy to tell him, I think my brother had bought a vehicle too, and I bought a vehicle. And so we're like, Papi, look at my car. And you know what he said to us? Mijita, that's not your car, that's the bank's car. When you
Oh,
pay for it,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
raining on my parade. I'm so proud of what I have accomplished. So that mentality of if you don't have money, don't buy it. And then this is not yours until you have the title.
Oh,
This is the bank's. So kind of that reality
oh
check.
wow. So what was it like? Did it take you after that, or like, I guess, was that the point where you were like, oh wow, like maybe I should start figuring this money thing out, or like did it take a little bit longer?
Yeah, Violeta, I think that it's a journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being financial savvy is a journey. I do think that it was a starting point to realize, but then without guidance, you're like, okay, so how do I build credit? I think the starting point was that I knew having the vehicle was going to help me build credit. And I still remember learning that I had the money to pay it off, but if I paid it off completely, I was not going to build credit. So that was
Mm-hmm.
also kind of funny from a cultural perspective. Like, I can only bulk credit if I owe you money, but if I pay you, like if I get the loan and pay you in 2 months, I'm not good. I'm still not good because
Yeah.
in order to bulk credit, I have to owe money, which is the complete opposite for me. And I'm like, no, it should be that I pay it off so quickly. And so then it was like, okay, I need to start getting credit cards.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to college for 4 years. Again, my parents didn't live here, so it was on my own. I traveled to Spain I did an internship, so I got in some debt with the credit cards, even though the army kind of helped pay for some of that. But I was still very young and very naive. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think I made some good decisions, but they were not necessarily based on my financial awareness. I think it was just decisions that I kind of learned from my mom. So one
Mm-hmm.
of them was when I was in the military, I put extra money towards the GI Bill. For the ones that don't know, is the fund that you get to pay for your education. So if
Mm-hmm.
you put a little bit extra money, you could increase it about like a crazy percentage. So I did that. So that helped me a lot in college.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, so in college, I was getting the money from the GI Bill, Violeta, plus Illinois had a program. So Illinois was giving me money. Illinois was paying my whole education. I was getting the paycheck from the army, and I was
Mm-hmm.
living in an apartment that was maybe $300. So I kind of live a really good life. And I picked up a
Mm-hmm.
part-time job just to hang out with my friends. But I was taking my laundry to the laundromat because for them to do it because I wanted to save time for myself and I thought I deserve it. So really bad
Yeah.
decision. I mean, I could have saved money during that time. I definitely could have saved money because of the income I was getting, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. I got in debt. I think when I graduated from college, I had, and I'm not proud of this. I don't think I have ever actually shared this with anyone. I had
Mm.
$15,000 in debt.
Oh wow.
Not education debt because my college was paid for. I didn't have to take any loans.
Mm-hmm.
But the $15,000 wasn't credit card and it was part of the internship in Spain because the army didn't pay for that and the internship didn't pay for it. I
Mm-hmm.
had a really great experience, but I graduated with that. And interesting enough, I started working at the bank and my husband now, who was my boyfriend then, and we started dating and kind of being serious dating. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
he's not he's not Hispanic. And he said, I remember him sitting down with me and I told him, and he had zero debt. He had worked like two jobs while he was in college. And he's the first one that kind of sat down with me and said, we're going to do kind of a set up a process.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was just paying, right, trying to pay. I think I had three credit cards. And so
Mm.
he it was the first time somebody told me, no, 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 you're gonna pay the ones with the highest rate first. But even more so, having to write it down, Violeta, it made it real
Yeah.
for me. Because I think I had acknowledgement, but sometimes we are kind of scared of saying it out loud because now it's real. I was just kind of paying the minimum payment.
Mm-hmm.
And when I wrote it down in a paper, it kind of hit me and it scared me a little bit. This was 2003 and I had $15,000 in credit card debt and I had
Yeah.
nothing to my name. No house, a car that now was 4 years old. And we created a plan, and I paid that, I think, in less than a year.
Yeah.
I wasn't making a lot of money. I was a personal banker. And I think that's when things really changed for me.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, sometimes it just takes that just facing it on because you're you think you're doing like taking action because you were paying it, but it was just the minimum payment and you could be doing that for a few years.
To this
But
day.
actually sitting down and facing that fear, because I know we and that guilt, because we deal with that guilt of making uh, a financial decision that wasn't the best, but going there and actually creating a plan, and you ended up paying it off, and you said a year. So uh, sometimes we just gotta face it.
Yeah. Yeah, and have a strategy to it, right? I had
Hmm.
somebody that took the time and really understood what it was, as opposed to saying, okay, 15,000, you're going to pay this much every month. It was, no, let's take a look. You got to look. And, that's what we try to do now with their clients, but you have to understand your debt because sometimes we
Hmm.
get into debt without understanding. And again, a bad behavior, even while I was paying the debt, that behavior and that relationship with money, my love language was giving gifts, and my mom was a giver. Is still a giver,
Oh.
and I love her. So even though I was paying, sometimes I found myself buying something unnecessary
Hmm.
to give to somebody for their birthday. I wanted to show my gratitude and my love through that. And while going on it to Ecuador for vacation, I couldn't go empty-handed. So suitcases full of gifts while I was getting in debt because
Hmm.
always felt that I had the need to show them love and repay for what they did, even though my parents kept saying, we don't need anything, we don't need anything.
Yeah.
And I think a little bit of a healing too. I went to a private school in Ecuador. We didn't have as much as others.
Hmm.
And so you have a paycheck. I think I was maybe unfortunately thinking that success was having nice things and having the nice
Hmm.
purses. And so now I have to show that I'm successful. Obviously, today I think very differently, but I was 22, 23 at that time, 26 maybe. And so I was still spending money in things that don't add any value.
Yeah, I did the same thing, going and get the Gucci shoes and the little Louis Vuitton bag, and now it's like I sold that like last year because it sat in my closet because then I was too scared to actually use it because it cost so much. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna let it go, and so yeah, I learned a lesson. I've gotten rid of all that stuff for the most part, unless I know I'm actually using it. Things are starting to come up. You were mentioning a little bit earlier, and through your story that I read, that you're realizing things that were told to you or that you learned, that you're realizing that you're kind of like, continuing the cycle.
Yeah, one of the things I was mentioning to you, I think the way I will call it is that relationship with money.
Mm-hmm.
The things that we learn through it, right? This idea of having to give back and the love language, right, comes from
Mm-hmm.
that relationship with money. I think I saw money as a luxury growing up,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to as a resource and a tool.
Mm-hmm.
So I think many, many of the people listening to this podcast have heard this growing up, that money doesn't grow on trees. El
Mm-hmm.
dinero no crece en los árboles, no matter where you went and what you did. It was like, do not even ask for it because we don't have money. And the other one was, we don't have money for that. We don't have money. We don't have money. We don't have money. And in reality, again, my parents made a lot of sacrifices because the money was going for education, and they were extremely humble people. So
Mm-hmm.
anytime, my brother and I joke that people used to come to visit, my mom will say, thank you so much for coming. Like she was so grateful that people will come to my house because our house was not as big and in a great location like others, but and so subconsciously you kind of have those ideas. And so Amelia's today, she's 8 years old now, but I realized when she was like maybe 3 and we used to go to the store, before we went in, I looked at Amelia in the eyes and I said, why are we going inside? We're going to get milk. We're not
Mm-hmm.
going to get toys. We don't have money for that. And then money doesn't go on trees. And
Mm-hmm.
every time we're going to go in for this. And so I remember we were at one of the stores and Amelia asked if she could have this toy. And then
Mm-hmm.
I look at her in the eyes and I said, do you remember Amelia? And she will say, money doesn't grow on trees. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, we don't have money for that. And as my husband and I, we budget. Again, we have come a long way, and we have to reset our budgets from time to time as we progress and we're more
Mm-hmm.
successful. We have to look at things differently. But as I was looking at my the money in my account, and we do have money for that. We have money for that.
Mm-hmm.
Not credit card money. We actually have money. We have done a really good job. We have
Mm-hmm.
made changes, and Media has an account with money because she gets gifts and cash and gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know what hit me. I think it was a combination of things and maybe it being exposed to clients. But I decided I needed to change the narrative. It's
Mm-hmm.
not that we don't have money for that. Should we spend money on that? That's the
Mm-hmm.
real question. And that's the real conversation with Amelia.
Yeah.
And so that started a journey that it's been wonderful, and she's extremely engaged, and we talk about things, and we even do budget, and we can go into more of that. But I realized again that I didn't have a good relationship with money, and then I saw money as a luxury. So when I got some, I needed to spend. I
Mm-hmm.
needed
Mm-hmm.
to showcase versus seeing money as a tool.
Yeah, yeah. I love that you said that of how we change that mindset of money as a luxury versus as a resource and a tool, because once that kind of like switched in my brain, like it it changed a lot of how I deal with my finances, how I'm investing and all that stuff. And uh the difference is huge. So I'm fine with driving right now. I have a little 2010 Honda Civic, and it gets me to point A and to point B to work. And that's all I need it for. We have my husband's truck for any other thing. So I can't bring myself, like you said, as like, do I need to spend money on that? Like, do I need to spend money on another car when I have one that's perfect? It's not pretty, but it works. And yeah, maybe once we move back down to Texas, that then I might go and buy a car, but more strategically. And like, I'm not gonna go out and get a new car. I've already said I'll never get a new car. It's I just can't. I can't do it. I don't know why. But yeah, that mindset shift is a game changer for sure.
It is, and it's for Amelia too, right? Because now we talk about needs versus wants, and that sometimes you want something, and it may not be a need, but you have put money aside for that.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
Emilia has her account and we do chores and I teach her, for us, it's extremely important to give back. But we
Mhm.
give back differently. It's not giving back just gifts for people that don't need it. It's giving back to organizations that we know are going to make an impact. And for Amelia to learn that you give some of what you get, especially when you're not doing anything to get.
Mhm.
And we put money aside for vacation. We're huge in experiences. Like we like a really good meal, a good restaurant, and bringing a meal on. So
Mhm.
those memories are important to us, but we put money aside for that. We're not living
Mhm.
paycheck by paycheck or day by day, right? And so it's been great to see also her mindset, because we go to the store and she has money in her account and she said, can I buy this? And I'm like, well, you could. You have money, but let's talk about why you want it. And you have 20 teddy bears at home that you don't even play with. Now, I have to tell you something funny that happened. So Amelia may be 6. I don't know. She was still very little. She
Uh-huh.
came home from school and she's very intuitive, and a deep thinker. But I guess they went through this in school. And she said to my husband and I, we were sitting there and she said, Mommy, do you know where money comes from? I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, money. It's like, do you know that money comes from paper? And we said, of course, money is made of paper. And she said, do you know where paper comes from? And my husband said, trees? She's like, yeah. And then she walked away. And him and I look at each other. We're like, well, I guess money does come from trees. It's a
Yeah.
laughing moment. It was so cute and funny. But I just want Amelia to have a healthy exposure. I know she's gonna make mistakes, and we have to make
Mm-hmm.
those mistakes safe for her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I do want her to have a different relationship with money because I think that when you have a healthy relationship with money, to your point, you can see money as a tool, you can invest, you can do a lot of those things that we were not exposed to because we
Yeah.
just saw money as a luxury.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad that you pointed that out of being okay with uh making financial mistakes because you are going to. And uh just real quick, as a real estate investor, that's one of the hardest things when I'm out here, promoting real estate investing and teaching it to to the Latino community. That's one of the biggest fears, is the potential to make mistakes. But like you mentioned, is that you set yourself up and provide a cushion to that if there is a mistake or something does go wrong, because that's the biggest fear as well, that a tenant doesn't pay or whatever. And it's like, no, you invest, but with that risk in mind, and you set yourself up for that risk through an emergency fund, just like you would for yourself. You do it for each property that you invest in, so that way you're okay. If you need to replace the roof, you have those funds there, then rather than it like come out of nowhere and then you're scrambling to pay it. And that's when that big old fear comes towards risk and the resistance to invest. And even if it's not real estate investing, similar with the stock market, especially with what
Oh,
happened
absolutely.
recently, I know it kind of like set a few people back of like hesitating to invest. So I know in our community, that's one big thing that we have to overcome.
Oh my gosh. And when I mean the numbers tell a story, right? We are
Mhm.
one of the fastest growing segments. There's a financial potential. There's so many positive numbers, but then you look at some of the opportunities, right? The organizations are also hoping to like bridge that gap. But I learned from a recent research that was posted in McKinsey report, 49% of Hispanic Latinos don't own any investments.
Mhm.
Violeta, and that's one of the best vehicles to build wealth because building wealth takes cycles, right? And
Yes.
again, financial education in 7 years is a journey. I'm still learning. I'm still gonna make mistakes.
Mhm.
I'm much better off than I was before. But think about that: 49% don't own an investment, and part of that is the culture, is the lack of awareness. Many of them don't even put money in the 401k. And I was one of them. I mean, if I go back and I wish I could look at my younger self and tell
Mhm.
her a different story, but I didn't start uh, putting money in my 401k until almost 1 year I was working for the bank.
Mhm.
I lost 1 year. And again, I was dating the person that's now my husband, and I
Mhm.
think I did it a little before because he just kept telling me, Joanna, you got to do it. And I was
Mhm.
losing money because the company was matching, of course. But it's just not something that it's familiar to us. It's a foreign
Yeah.
language. So any type of investment. What's so funny though, Violeta, if you think about the immigrant,
Mhm.
we're risk takers, just live in our countries.
Yes. Yes.
We
I'm
take
glad
so
you
much
brought that
risk
up.
being young, but then we become, I think it's because we don't know enough. And sometimes we're afraid to ask the question. We think that we need
Mhm.
to know more before we do something, and we are not always comfortable with raising our hand and going to people like you or people in the community that can teach them. So
Yeah.
it's kind of funny to understand that paradigm, right? Risk takers, but at the same time, quite afraid of taking advantage of those things.
Yeah. 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 That's a big thing that I'm glad you mentioned it, because it is true. It's like, we will take the biggest risk of leaving a country to another country where most of the time they don't even know the language yet. They have to learn the language when they get here, or at least, sometimes they still don't. Like my mom is still kind of like iffy with English. She could understand it, but like she's still not, after being here like over 30 years at this point. Um, but when it comes for her to do anything, regarding her money, like it's so hard to get her. And similar a little bit, my dad's a little bit easier, but he still has his kind of like hesitation and everything like that. But yeah, we took the biggest risk, but now with money, it is like I'm doing everything the safe way.
Yeah.
And yeah, which is a great, like to kind of like wrap it up, going into we were talking about BOK, and we were mentioning, I can't remember if we were recording at that time, but we were talking about the resources, and you mentioned that it is the Hispanic segment. And so I want
Yes.
to get know a little bit about that because it's so important, and I'm glad that BOK is actually, implementing that because we need it. So wanted for you to share a
Yeah,
little bit about that.
absolutely. I know. I have to say first that, I have my dream job and, not everybody can say that. So I think we're very blessed. So I
Mm-hmm.
work with Bank of Oklahoma here in Tulsa, but
Mm-hmm.
it's part of BOKF. So we're in many
Mm-hmm.
states. In other states, we have the local name like Bank of Texas,
Oh,
um,
okay. Mm-hmm.
Bank of Albuquerque, and then BOKF and some others. So this job started as a project, working on a project with different individuals to see how we were supporting the Hispanic Latino community, and then a job was created. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a multi-year strategy, and one of the things that, as I was mentioning, the Hispanic demographic is it's a powerhouse, it's a growing segment. Last year, it was shared that if the Hispanic Latinos were a standalone country in the US, we will
Mm-hmm.
be like either the fourth or fifth GDP in the world.
Yeah.
4.4 million businesses owned by Latinos. We contribute 800 billion to the economy. And so, I want to make sure people know this is not necessarily a diversity strategy. This is a business strategy.
Mm-hmm.
We want
Mm-hmm.
to take it to the growth of the community. And also at the same time, Bank of Oklahoma, BOKF, has always had a commitment to advance the communities that we serve. And so those things go hand in hand for us. So, we want to be the bank of choice for Latinos. My goal is to help Latino individuals, help them build wealth and become financially independent. And so different pieces in the strategy, but the crucial one, Violeta, is financial education. Regardless of the segmentation within the Hispanic Latino community, we're not a monolithic community. We come in different
Mm-hmm.
shades. We have affluent clients, affluent businesses, but we also have entrepreneurs that are just starting. We have emerging people who are just emerging, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
youth, 1 million Latinos are turning 18 every year. And we expect that for the next 2 decades. So, I mean, just think about the powerhouse, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so um, we take that with our community relations very seriously. And so I learned that April is Financial Inclusion Month. So we do workshops across the country, but in Tulsa, we're going to have 4 workshops in April, 3 of them in Spanish regarding identity theft, which unfortunately our community is very exposed to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, how to create an emergency fund. And this is geared to anyone, whether you're a personal client, business client, or if you're not a client, you can attend. We're planning on doing some of those virtually so we can, attract people even in other places. But like I said, we have people in every market where we are located. And so we'll be doing some of those as well. But financial education is absolutely key.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad that you're taking that initiative and providing those resources, and especially with the identity theft. I always forget about that one because you're right. Like I could imagine, like I always think about like my parents. It's like um you know, at any point because they don't know like how documents work, and especially, like growing up, I was the one that like translated everything for them. So they rely on me to this day. Like I'm currently visiting my family, and my dad already had a stack of papers for me. And it's like, I got this, I got this. I was like, okay, this is this, and this is that, and blah blah. So I could see how for sure that puts them at risk. So I'm glad that y'all have a workshop for that as well, because I didn't even think about that aspect as well.
Yeah, and it's, I work with a lot of nonprofit organizations locally. So two of those are going to be done with Avanzando Juntos.
Mm-hmm.
And we do a lot of work with nonprofits. Because, Violeta, when I think about the work we do, one of the pieces for me and the leadership in the bank is we want to be very intentional. So
Mm-hmm.
it's understanding what's the real need and where can we add value? Because we are not going to add value everywhere. And
Yeah.
so working with local nonprofits, and I said this to the people listening to you, if you're in a leadership position, find those organizations that already have influence, not only because
Mm-hmm.
of the influence, because they know the community. And so
Yeah.
you're going to be able to be more effective addressing the needs that they have already identified. And using the infrastructure that they have, where you can provide the tools and resources that they need, such as bilingual people that have knowledge in the finance world. Sometimes even, maybe they can do donations for their operational costs. And so I think that those, because you have to think, how am I going to be more effective so I can reach as many people to help with what the mission is? So we do a lot of work with local nonprofits. And then we also obviously do a lot of work through the branches. Work with your personal banker. That's what they're there for. Don't be
Mm-hmm.
afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
That's their role. That's their job, right? I can imagine though, Violeta, how hard it is to try to change the mindset, like you say, your mom and your dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you, it happened to me many times because I think for a lot of immigrants, especially the first generation foreign born like your parents,
Mm-hmm.
we remember our country and our customs the way we left them, and we
Mm-hmm.
don't see them evolve. So we sometimes try to repeat the same things that we knew because we think that our countries are still doing the same thing. And
Mm-hmm.
when I went to Ecuador and saw the banking system today, I was blown away because it has changed.
Yes.
Um, so I have tried to remember that when I'm raising my daughter, because Ecuador has changed. I can't continue to try to do the same things I did there over 20 years ago. But
Uh-huh.
I think that's what we carry, and also what I see from a lot of the people that I work with. I serve in nonprofit organizations as well. The lack of trust of clients with their financial institutions here, sometimes it really doesn't have much to do with what the financial institutions do. It's
Mm-hmm.
more the lack of trust based of their experience at home,
Yes.
because of what happened in their home countries and because of the lack of regulations. And so we got to understand that it's almost like they have trauma the same way we did, but even
Yes.
more so. And so we have to be mindful of that to be able to help. You're not just teaching a class,
Mm-hmm.
changing a mindset.
Yeah. You know what? I guess I never considered it that way, but as you were talking about it, it did bring to mind of how my parents, because yeah, my mom always talks about, Mexico, this and this and that. I was and she goes and visits it, but she only goes to like her hometown and then that's it. But I've gone throughout Mexico as I reconnect to my roots. So I've been going around try to go visit different parts of Mexico, and I am seeing those changes. And even with my dad now, at first they would always, I do remember them mentioning about the banks in Mexico and all this stuff. And now they've done so like improved so much that now like they have like he's getting the retirement over there now too, because
Yeah.
now he my dad's 65 now, so he's able to be eligible, and so he's been going back and forth, and he's like every time he comes back he's like, wow, like now they put it like in this little card just like over here and everything, and it's like yeah, I could see now what you were talking about, and it didn't occur to me of that's kind of like where it stems from for them.
Yeah, and I think, when I think of financial education, I serve in the board of three organizations. So I do a lot of work with them to develop business entrepreneurs as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the immigrants are not all the same. When
Mm-hmm.
you start looking at, in a class, in the past in the states where I worked, always the largest population of attendees of any class were from Mexican descendants, right?
Mm-hmm.
First generation, maybe second, maybe first generation born. But now I sit in a class and 80% are Venezuelans,
Mm,
10% Mexican. And then in the next class, 90% are Mexican. So, but you have a lot of more cultures, and then you have different degrees of education. The people that we meet with, business entrepreneurs, a lot of them are graduated not only from high school, but from college. So it's a very different audience, Violeta. And that's why I think
mm-hmm.
it's important. You know, when you think about doing financial education, I think the first thing it's to define what do you want the outcome to be? What do you want to help these people accomplish, right? Because it's for
Mm-hmm.
them, it's not for us. Um, and then realize that somebody told me this and it was very powerful. There will always be a first generation of immigrants, but that
Mm-hmm.
first generation is not going to look the same. They're
Mm-hmm.
more
Yeah.
acculturated, they're more educated. Many of them have access to banking in their home countries, but the culture nuance is going to be different. So we still need to help them, but we got to kind of think a little different. And I think the power of working with local people it's has been very great for us.
Before I close the episode, where can they go and look for these workshops? Like, is on the website or where can they find them?
Yes, so we post in social media. So like I said, you can go and find us on LinkedIn, or you can go to website and you either look from Bank of Oklahoma if you're in Oklahoma. And then we also post those workshops in social media. And I think we're going to be adding to our local sites for clients and non-clients. But
Mm-hmm.
they can search once we post in social media, we will give them the link and they can find the workshops that we are working on.
Okay, awesome. I'll make sure to put all those links to your LinkedIn and all the social media platforms that you have and the website down in the show notes or in the description, depending where if you're watching on YouTube or regular like Spotify or whatever. But yeah, thank you so much, Joanna, for coming on here. I learned a lot and a lot of things to consider for in the future to help our community. And I'm super excited that the blank Bank of Oklahoma is out here, doing these things and having these resources for our community. So thank you so much for coming here.
Violeta, thank you for creating this space. I've been watching some of the interviews you've done, and I am learning so much. Again, I love the chisme and name to it. And for giving us that voice and that opportunity to help others. You know, you and I, as we connected, have so many similar things that happen, and I'm sure the people listening to do as well. But I think, what I will share with them is you got to take the first step. It's never too late. You got to take the first step, leverage the resources. You don't have to do this on your own, but you do have the opportunity to create and change that cycle, not just for yourself, but for your kids as well. So thank you again, Violeta, for the opportunity. Muchísimas gracias.
All right, thank you. Well, that's it for this episode. I will see everyone in the next one. Bye.
Bye bye.